Hello, general psychology students. So this is the third and last video that's going to cover chapter 9 on lifespan human growth and development. So let me call up the PowerPoint slides. So in the last video, we finished talking about the newborn reflexes. We were talking about physical development. But now I want to talk about some psychosocial development that happens with babies, and it's this research on attachment. Attachment is so important. So attachment is the positive emotional bond that develops between a child and a caregiver. And we know about attachment in part from some horrific things that happened. I believe it was in World War II, but it might have been in World War I, where there were so many babies that were left as orphans that they were put in huge orphanages. And it was impossible with a limited number of staff to take care of all these infants. And so at one point I'm not sure if it was a study that was done intentionally or it just happened, but there were certain kids in the orphanage that were held often and rocked and fed, and others that were just handed a bottle. And those that were just handed a bottle, they did not cognitively develop or emotionally developed, and even physically, they looked very tiny for their age and had a hard time interacting with people and a hard time thinking and growing, and were not reaching any of the milestones. But the kids in the orphanage that were held and fed and talked to and cooed, they were meeting the milestones. So this sense that there's something going on that needs to happen between a caregiver and an infant beyond the diapers being changed and a bottle being given, but that there's something else that goes on was sort of highlighted there. And then Harry Harlow did a bunch of amazing studies with monkeys. And so you can, after you watch this video, watch one of the videos that I've posted after this of Harry Harlow's infant monkey experiment. It's a very short clip on YouTube video where you can actually see some of the pieces of his experiment. But he would have these monkeys would be put alone in a cage, and instead of having a mother, would have a wire mother that had a bottle, so that the little monkey could get with that wire mom and get fed. But on another piece of wire, they put the cloth. You can see it in this slide here. This warm cloth that the monkey could cling to. And even though this mother, the cloth mother, could not feed the baby, it was comforting because of the cloth. And what Harlow found was that whenever the monkey was stressed, he would go to the cloth mother, not the wire mother. So this gave Harlow an idea that, again, there's something about attachment that goes beyond being fed, that there's something that goes on here. And so Mary Ainsworth did a lot of research with humans trying to understand attachment. And one of the ways that she came up to measure it is now called the Ainsworth Strange Situation. And there's a YouTube video, again, very short, where you can watch it and get a sense of what the Ainsworth Strange Situation is like. And so what happens is the caregiver and the child will enter a room that has a bunch of toys in it. And some children will, sort of stay near the mom, but then as they get used to the environment, will go and explore and then use the mom as sort of like home base. Then what they do is they have the mom leave the room and they watch to see what happens with the baby. And then when the mom returns to the room, how does the baby interact with the mom? Okay. And based on this, Ainsworth put children into one of 4 different categories of how attached they were. So in the secure attachment, the infants use the mom as a home base when they're exploring the new environment. And when the mom leaves, oh, they're upset. They cry and cry. But when she returns, they're happy. And they allow the mom to comfort them. and they get comforted by the mom. And once they're comforted by the mom, then they kind of want to get back down and explore the world some more. And so this is secure attachment, according to Ainsworth. And about 50% of all children will be securely attached. And the example in the video that you're going to watch, the first child has the secure attachment. But there are 3 different kinds of insecure attachment. So with avoidant, this is the second child in the video. Um, uh, about 25% of children are going to have this avoidant attachment style. And what happens here is you can see with the second child, when the mom and the child enter the room, he doesn't use the mom as a home base. He's exploring everything. And when the mom leaves, he is fine with it. And then when the mom comes back, he's kind of fine with that too. The physiological measures show changes. So he is upset physiologically, like his heart rate will go up, but he doesn't use the mom as someone to comfort him. There's no observable reaction to the mom. And what we think, or what Ainsworth thinks that this avoidant attachment style comes from, is when the child's needs are not met. So the child has learned that he cannot trust a caregiver, that he has to rely on himself. And so whether mom's there or not doesn't really matter because he's taking care of himself anyway. Now, the next kind of insecure attachment is the anxious ambivalent. And about 20% of kids will fall in this category. And they tend to be, as children or as babies, ambivalent. As adults, they're anxious. This is the third child in the video, that if you watch the Ainsworth video that I've posted. And so you can see here that the child is really clingy to the mom. And when the mom leaves, the child's upset. But when the mom returns, the child won't really let the mother comfort him or her. The child is he's angry with the mother and won't let the mother comfort him, but also won't let the mother go. So there's this sense, I'm mad at you, but don't leave me. I'm mad at you, but don't leave me. And that's why we're calling it ambivalent. And then as these children become adults, they can become very anxious. This seems to happen with inconsistent behavior on the caregiver's part. So this might be a mom who's got an issue with depression. And so she's a really good, caring, always meeting the kids' needs when she's not in a depressive episode. But there might be every once in a while, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, where she doesn't really get out of bed very much and the child has to fend for himself. So the child never knows what's going to happen. It's not like the avoidant child who knows you can't depend on mom, she's never around. But the anxious ambivalent attachment is from sometimes mom's there, and when she's there, she's great. But sometimes she's gone. And again, it's the reason why if you suffer from depression, when you're in a depressive episode, you can just get someone else to come in and take care of the infant during that time. Then the baby will be fine. It doesn't have to always be the mom who's giving the care, just as long as the needs are met. Okay. And then the last one is the disorganized, disoriented. And this is very small amount, like only 5%. It's not in the video. It's kind of a mix of all 3. And this usually happens if the child is like abused. It's not very common at all. And they just have a really hard time, inconsistent, contradictory behavior. Okay. And then what happens as an adult when these based on these childhood attachments. So if you're securely attached as an infant, then oftentimes as an adult, you'll trust your partner when you're apart. You enjoy being together, but you have some separate friends and there's mutual respect. You kind of like your time alone, but like your time together. Those who are avoidant, the avoidant attachment when they're younger, as adults, they don't have long-term committed relationships oftentimes. They can learn to trust and love, but it takes a very long time. They tend to be loners. And they're fine. They get along fine in the world, but they're not going to have those close, intimate, attached relationships. Then the anxious ambivalent, these people can be, as adults, can be very clingy. I want to be with the person almost all the time, and they can almost smother their partner. Again, with patience and time, they can learn to trust their partner, but they're going to really need constant reassurance from the partner that they're always going to be there and that they are loved and that everything is good. And the disorganized, disoriented one, that's a relatively new one. And so there isn't much research on what this is like when they're older. So I can't tell you about that. Okay, now let's talk about parenting styles. Some of the time when we teach this general psychology class, we ask the students, you're not being asked this semester to do it, but we ask students to write a one-page paper about which kind of parenting style was used on them and was it good or not, and which one they're probably going to use on their child. And so authoritarian parents is one kind of parenting style. This is my way is the right way. You do what I say, when I say it, how I say it. They demand unquestioning obedience. They're very rigid and strict. The children can be anxious and withdrawn and unhappy, but oftentimes the kids are also okay. Like they're obedient and they do what they're supposed to do. The authoritarian parents oftentimes are training their child to work in an environment where obedience is key. So they're training their child to work in one might say blue collar. Oftentimes blue collar jobs, the supervisor is all knowing and you have to do whatever the supervisor says, and you're not supposed to be creative and come up with new and interesting ways of doing things. You're just supposed to do what you're told. So they're teaching their children to do that to them so they'll be successful in those types of jobs as they get older. Authoritative parents, however, are firm but fair. They're going to offer lots of choices and they're going to expect the child to have some say so in their parenting. I mean, not when they're very young, but as they get older. So there's going to be lots of reasoning. If the child does something wrong, there'll be consequences and disciplining for it, but with explanations. The reason why this is happening is because you did this. This is what I expect from you in the future. This is a consequence of what happens. And the child might say, but I thought it was okay for me to do this because of this. And then the parent would explain, oh, but no, it doesn't work that way. I can see why you might think that, but that's not how it works. So you're still going to get the discipline, but and get the consequence. But now you've learned something. Look, now in the future, you know not to do this. These types of parents usually think that their child is going to end up working in more of a white collar job where they're going to have to be creative and show initiative and do more than just obey. And so they want the child to be able to reason things out very well and be creative and come up with new ways of doing things and understand rules and how rules are context dependent oftentimes. And so they're actively engaging their child for that type of life. Neglectful, uninvolved parents. These parents provide, room and board and food. I guess that is board for the child, but they don't provide much love. And the key thing is they're not interested in their child's lives at all. Oftentimes, parents like this, they won't even know their kids' best friends' names, much less like the, the names of the kids that the child isn't getting along with. They won't know whether their child likes to swim or not. They won't know if the child likes soccer or not. They won't know if their child likes to color or would prefer to do something more active or which TV shows interest them. And so the kids tend to be very indifferent or withdrawn toward the parents. The parents are uninvolved with the kids. The kids kind of move on their own and sort of are more withdrawn. Permissive parents give their children relaxed and inconsistent direction. They're rarely going to punish the child. They're very much more interested in being friends with the kid, with their children, rather than seeing them as a guiding advice giving um, center in their child's life. They're very warm and caring, so they'll know all about their child's best friend and friend they don't and whether they'd rather go swimming or whether they'd rather have dessert or food. But the permissive parent may let the child eat dessert before eating, the vegetables and fruits, and it they sort of let the child guide their own parenting. And oftentimes kids who are grown up with this parenting style, they can be immature and lack self-discipline. However, there's some research that shows that with the permissive parents, the kids have more self-confidence. Now, if you lack self-discipline and you're self-confident, you might just be arrogant, not so good. But um, uh, rather than seeing these as good or bad, I think it's better to see them as different ways of being, not the neglectful, uninvolved one, but the other ones are just different ways of doing it. Our culture clearly, especially middle class culture, we think that the authoritative parents are the best way to parent. So you might give some thought to how you were parented and how that worked for you. Here's a quick quiz. Infants who display secure attachment never cry when their caregiver leaves the room, use their caregiver as a secure base from which to explore the environment, get very upset when their caregiver leaves and usually continue to show anger and distress when the caregiver returns, or do not pay much attention to what their caregiver is doing. And the correct answer is use their caregiver as a secure base from which to explore the environment. Another type quiz question. Gabriella's mother practices the authoritative style of parenting. This suggests that Gabriella's mother encourages her to be independent, but still places limits and controls on her behavior, is uninvolved in Gabriella's life, is restrictive, punitive, and engages in little verbal exchange with Gabriella when they have differences of opinion, or sets very few rules or limitations for Gabriella's behavior. So authoritative is encourages her to be independent, but still places limits and controls on behavior. Okay. This puberty and the brain, I'm going to let you guys do that from the book and on your own. And same thing with cognitive development. This is in the book. I think it's very easy to understand if you're reading the book. I don't think you'll have any trouble understanding this. Let's talk, though, about Kubler-Ross's grief cycle. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did a whole bunch of research with people who were dying. And so these are not people who died in a car wreck and it was instantaneous. These are people that learn that they have terminal cancer, what happens, or they're toward the end of the life cycle. And she came up with these 5 stages of grief. The first is denial. And in this denial stage, there's often avoidance of whatever has been, the diagnosis has been given, confusion, there might be elation, shock, fear, all this, is this even going on? Then anger can happen next, where the person is frustrated and anxious and angry that this is happening to them. And then bargaining. If they believe in a higher power, they might go, God, if you let me get over this, I'll do this for you. And there's a lot of struggling and reaching out to others here. And they want to make sure other people know their story. And then depression, where they sort of as they come to grips with the fact that this is really going to happen. There's real overwhelming sadness. And then acceptance, where they'll explore their options, but they have a new plan in place for moving on, which may be them writing their eulogy. It might be, what's going to happen when they die. There's, if you watch the movie All That Jazz, now there's swearing in the movie and there's some promiscuity, quite a bit of promiscuity in the movie, but if that doesn't bother you, All That Jazz shows a comedian talking about these 5 stages over and over, and sort of shows it's what is his name? Bill Rossi? No, it's a famous the man who wrote Chicago and directed Chicago. He did a lot of theater plays and musicals, and it's about his actual life. Now, Kubler-Ross looked at the grief cycle with death, but it can be applied to anything. So those of you that are brand new to Cameron, now I know we're in our second semester now, but or many of you started, if you're a freshman, many of you, started in the fall. But oftentimes when people first go away to college, there's a grief cycle because you're no longer oftentimes a full-time member of your family of origin. You're now living in a dorm and you're not with your family. You might come back you might be with your family maybe for just a weekend every now and then on holidays. And so at the beginning, there's this denial that you've lost this family of origin, that it's not going to be the same, that now, like, you're not a kid anymore. You're a young adult, you're an emerging adult. And oftentimes there's some denial where you'll go, no, I'm still part of the family. And then when you realize you're not, you go back home and your younger siblings have kind of moved on and they know how to get along without you there all the time. And there might be some anger. You're angry that people aren't missing you more. And you're angry that you're not part of the family in the same way you were part of them before. And there might be some bargaining that you do then, like, I'll take you out for ice cream to your younger sibling, and you take them out for ice cream, this sense of, if I spend time with you and buy you ice cream, then we can go back to I'm the big brother and you're the little sister, where the little sister, since you've been gone, has been maybe doing fine without you there and learning to live without you, but you want her to depend on you more. And then there's oftentimes some depression as you get used to, wow, that cycle, that stage of my life is over and I'm entering a new stage, and it's exciting to be in this new stage. But in addition to being in this new stage, you have to grieve the stage that you lost. And then there's acceptance, where I'm a college student now and I'm sort of have one foot in my family, but another foot as an independent Cameron person. Now, I know not all of you are doing that. Some of you are mothers and fathers right now, and long ago you left your family of origin, and some of you are living with your parents and raising your kids, and so you haven't gone through this particular grief cycle. But this grief cycle could be used for almost anything. You lose your arm in an accident, you go through the grief cycle. Some people believe that in addition, that it's kind of circular, that it comes in waves, that yes, you go through these 5 stages, but you might go like through 3 of them and then back up again, and do all 5 of them and then go back to the beginning. So they're not always in sequence and then it's over. So, all right, well, there are some videos that I posted over some of these things, and next week I'll be talking about social psychology. All right, I hope you have a good week and enjoy learning about developmental. If you have any questions, email me at maryd@cameron.edu.